हेलो दोस्तों, स्वागत है आप सभी का हमारे चैनल इग्नो सेंटर पर। तो दोस्तों, आपकी जो प्रीवियस वीडियो था पार्ट 2 का, उस पर हमने क्वेश्चन नंबर 2 के जो शॉर्ट नोट्स थे उनका क्वेश्चन नंबर ए और बी कराया था। और आज ये पार्ट पर हम आपको क्वेश्चन नंबर सी, और अगर ये वीडियो लंबा नहीं बना तो डी और ई भी इसी पार्ट पर कंप्लीट करने की कोशिश करेंगे। तो दोस्तों, अगर आप हमारे चैनल के साथ नए जुड़े हैं तो चैनल को एक बार सब्सक्राइब कर लीजिएगा और साथ ही साथ बेल आइकन को दबा दें ताकि सबसे पहले आपको नोटिफिकेशन मिल जाए। तो दोस्तों, बढ़ते हैं हम आज की अपनी क्वेश्चन की तरफ, जो आपका क्वेश्चन रहेगा क्वेश्चन नंबर 3। और क्वेश्चन है आपका द वुमन एज द सेकेंड सेक्स, एंड द आंसर फॉर दिस क्वेश्चन इज पोजिशन ऑफ वुमेन। This time in the history of feminism is also called the second wave of feminism. It came as a response to the experience of men in World War II and the interaction with women and families upon their post-war return home. The late 1940s post-war boom, an era not only characterized by unprecedented economic growth, a baby boom, suburban expansion, and the triumph of capitalism, but also an era marked by consistent effort to re-establish pre-war practical social trend. This fact was clearly illustrated by the media of the time. For example, television shows such as Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver idealized domestically, placing women in a closed sphere where they were only expected to fulfill the roles of housewife and mothers. Although not popularized until 20 years later, in her work The Second Sex, Simone de Beauvoir examined as early as 1949 the notion of woman being perceived as other. In the Practical Society, she went on to conclude the male-centered ideology was being further accepted as a norm and enforced simply by the ongoing development of myth, and that the fact that women are capable of getting pregnant, lactating, and menstruating is in no way a valid cause or explanation to place them as the second sex. Furthermore, Sanithya Puches Epstein note that in 1963, Betty Friedan explicitly objected to the mainstream media image of women, stating that placing women at home limited their possibilities, horizons, and was a mere waste of talent and potential. The perfect nuclear family image depicted and strongly marked at the time, she wrote, did not reflect happiness and was rather degrading for women. Though it is widely accepted that the movement lasted from the 1960s into the late 1990s, the exact year of the movement are more difficult to pinpoint and are often disputed. The movement is usually believed to have begun in 1963, when mother of the movement, Betty Friedan, published her bestseller, The Feminine Massive, and President John F. Kennedy's Presidential Commission on the Status of Women released its report on gender inequality. The report, which revealed great discrimination against women in American life, along with Friedan books, which spoke to the discontent of many women, especially housewives, led to the formation of many local, state and federal government women groups as well as many independent women liberation organizations. Friedan was referencing a movement as early as 1964. The movement grew with legal victories such as the Equal Pay Act of 1963, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act 1964, and the Griswold vs. Connecticut Supreme Court ruling of 1965, and in 1966 Friedan joined other women and men to found the National Organization for Women. Among the most significant legal victories of the movement after the formation of now were a 1967 executive order extending full affirmative action right to women, Title IX, and the Women Education Equity Act 1972 and 1975, Educational Equality, Title X, 1970, Health and Family Planning, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act 1974, the Pregnancy Discrimination of Act 1978, the illegalization of martial rape, and the legalization of no-fault divorce in all states, a 1975 law requiring the US military academies to admit women, and many Supreme Court cases, perhaps most notably Reed vs. Reed of 1971 and Rio v. Wade of 1973. However, the changing of the social attitudes towards women is usually considered the greatest success of the women movement. So friend, till here, yeah, question number C short notes was completed, and now we begin with our next question, which is question number D. And the question was base superstructure relationship in Marxist criticism. And the answer for this question is base and superstructure are two linked theoretical concepts developed by Karl Marx, one of sociology founder. Base refer to the production force or the material and resources the generate the goods society needs. Superstructure describes all other aspects of society. When it comes to the base, Marx observed that it tends via a tremendous loss of violence in real history. The explanation for this is straightforward. Marx was well aware of the fact that the ruling elite was putting up a strong fight against the force of transformation. Great and dramatic change take place at the base, where the two conflicting classes battle to the death for their own existence. In the superstructure, such violent confrontation do not occur as often. In the words of Marx, with the alteration of the economic basic, the whole vast superstructure is changed more or less quickly. The use of the term transform is important because according to Marx, the modification in the base are followed by changes in the superstructure. For example, the legal superstructure that legitimizes and supports the operation of the new system is a critical component of this process. We can observe that in law that effect of change may be seen early, and that the law follows the restructure foundation later in the process. However, the situation is different in the matter of philosophy, ideology, or culture. People see the potential of change as well as its bad and good element in philosophy or ideology long before there is a corresponding social upheaval take place. Additionally, echoes of discontent, grievance, and complaint are mirrored in literature, dating back to the event that take place on the base itself. In this sense, all of these superstructure have an impact on the base and increase the intensity of the struggle there rather than being changed by the conflict there. It is important to remember that change must not to be taken too literally. Therefore, we must read Marx's assertion about the superstructure in an entirely different light. The inquiry should be how can individuals become aware of their condition of life inside the superstructure of its circumstance of life if the change occur first at the base to related how can individual get involved in political superstructure and free themselves from the constraint of the existing base, which has become obsolete and must be replaced in order for the creative forces of mankind to be free to flow in a positive historical direction. Marx's view on the connection between the base and the superstructure were only brief conveyed in his general comment. On the subject, actually, Marx spoke of the connection between the base and the superstructure in basic, straightforward words with the goal of allowing these two aspects of social reality to be grasped in concept in abstraction. He wanted to make certain that sociologists and activists were aware of the critical importance of the presence of a base as shown by Marx's concept of the base. Idealist philosophers who indulged in wild speculation were mistaken in their belief that social world was some sort of clay ready to be molded by human beings according to their desire. Marx never could emphasize the significance of social transformation at the stage of the mode of its production unless he presented the base as a crucial and very difficult element. The goal, though, is to make a difference. In order to do this, social reality had to be removed from the purview of philosophers and left in the hand of those who have been the true producer, the proletariat. Instead, nothing significant would happen unless someone took the initiative, while individuals who simply interpreted the world stay in their position. The world with its whole ruling and influencing base remained in place to oppress and abuse the working classes of society. As the nation of the base were intended, once this has been acknowledged in principle, it is simply to see the superstructure as a domain of human thinking and creativity interact with the base in a major way. Law as superstructure. What is a law and who form it? Actually, at every point in history, Some of the human minds are always at the work to frame law. In order to legitimize the misappropriation of socially generated sources by a few in society. In fact, it is the owing class and that misappropriate the surplus in a legal way. This makes the existing law a perspective for the state to function under and also at the same time offer sufficient space to the large bureaucracy and judiciary to expand by the implementation and administration of justice. The irony is evident here. We need to look at the version of justice which is projected to the masses by privileged section of society. The way justice is explained and interpreted is completely depend on the requirement of the mode of production and is projected by the privileged section as something which is moral, spiritual, ethical, and universal. Going on with this point of view, we can simply understand justice as the social sanction for the simple purpose of exploitation and misappropriation. However, the owing class would call it the right and not misappropriation. This simple complex is, however, very complex if worked out in philosophical terms. It would be interesting to notice in this respect that how legal celebrities go on with the debate on the topic in all over the world. The next subtopic is the political superstructure. According to Marx, the most important place of human existence is the political realism, as it is the only realm where people struggle and fight the battle for change. The formation of political groups like political parties is very crucial as it reflects the idea of a specific class and help in the mobilization of the masses on behalf of that specific class. In this context, it is important to look at the role which trade union played in England and France in the mid-19th century, as they help in attracting attention towards the burning issue of the age. How crucial is politics to the ruling bourgeois class can be very well understood in terms of the fact that it has enabled entrepreneurship and industry to decisively seize economic power from feudal nobility and aristocratic class in the 17th and 18th century. Considering the role which politics play in history, it would not be unjustified to call it a science of changing society. One reason that Marx and other later thinkers gave utmost importance to the political superstructure is that it worked directly on the base to transform its working. Politics is always concerned about the present and contemporary. It also provides an activist edge to philosophy, ideology, religious belief, culture, and literature. The next subtopic is the religious superstructure. It may not sound normal that the concept of God and religion share a tangible link or connection with the social structure and that the universal or so-called eternal religious value have their root in the social functioning of their time. These so-called religious principles form a concrete link with the society in which exist and work upon an important or definite role. This helps in changing people's point of view and ideologies. There is little doubt that this religion and divine values seem to guide people from a distant spiritual standpoint and does not appear to have any connection with the mundane human existence. But this very stance of religious outlook is questionable. In fact, we can go ahead and label social pleasure and compulsion on the various religious beliefs and practice which exist in society. Lots of changes that Christianity has undergone after the Renaissance can be traced to the various social and political changes in the society of Europe. Another important point which we must bring our attention to is the two different conceptions of God. Therefore, the feudal conception of God and the capitalist conception of God. The feudal conception of God is very different from that of the capitalist conception of God. The former is operative, overbearing, and paternally beneficent, while the latter is relatively sympathetic, friendly, and persuasive. It would be quite interesting to look at the various aspects of relational principles from this point of view, which let us peek into the basic foundation of religious belief, which in fact is deeply rooted in the social practice of the life of the time. In this context, looking at Milton's idea of God and the Son would be fascinating, as Milton in his magnum opus Paradise Lost attribute highly divine attitude in his portrayal of God and the Son. As there was a radical change at the base, the entire idea of God and Christianity underwent a radical transformation in the writing of the 18th century. The working of the philosophical and cultural superstructure is still more intricate, and the dominant reason which makes them work in a very peculiar fashion is that they deal directly with the ideas, feeling, and emotion. The key point which distinguishes philosophy from that of religion is faith. In religion, one has to just preach or tell, and everything else is being done by the faith of the listener. But in philosophy, one has to work out, analyze, and explain in order to make people understand. In religion, faith does not allow people to question the tenet, but the question is the mainstay of philosophy, without which the entire concept would fall. This concept of philosophical superstructure makes it more independent from the base, and the two endpoints that we have discussed earlier do not exist in the case of philosophical superstructure. While understanding this key concept, one must keep in mind that there is no one-to-one correlation between this superstructure and the economic mode, and that people would only see economic mode as distortion than in realistic proportion. The next subtopic is the realm of culture as superstructure. In the case of culture and literature, we confront the more autonomous and independent nature of superstructure. These segments of human life in different phases of history project different emotions of human existence in such a way that they appear to be our own feeling and emotion of the present time. Some of the questions which we must care to think upon here are: why is this way? Does this is any way mean that a kind of intensity enter into the emotion and feeling represent which make them attractive to the audience? Perhaps this is the reason that literature which was produced somewhere very far in time and place managed to disturb the chords of emotion in our hearts, and in this way we cannot claim that culture and literature have a direct link with a specific base. They give a kind of impression which suggests that they do not belong to the realm of the superstructure of a particular era and are related to humanity as a timeless and universal phenomenon. The idea of the entire argument is to stress that the ruling class or the privileged section of society are deeply interested in the construction of values and ideas. Out there we see some writers and thinkers who not only take the responsibility of upholding but also explain the religiosity and spirituality, while there are other thinkers and writers and intellectuals who not only critically examine these values and ideals of religious and spiritual nature but also question them from various different angles. The privileged section or the powerful section of the society attain a sort of hostile attitude toward these writers and intellectuals who view are not friendly to the existing construction of norms and values. A mode of production is historically distinctive for Marx because it constitutes part of an organic totality or self-reproducing whole, which is capable of constantly recreating its own initial condition, and thus perpetuates itself in more or less stable way for centuries or even millennia. By performing social surplus labor in a specific system of properties relation, the working classes constantly reproduce the foundation of the social order. Normally, a mode of production shapes the mode of distribution, circulation, and consumption and is regarded by the state. When, however, new productive force or new social relations develop that conflict with the existing mode of production, this mode of production will either evolve without losing its basic structure or else being to break down. This then gives rise to a transitional era of social instability and social conflict until a new social order is finally consolidated with a new mode of production. And till here our question number D short answer was also finished, and now we move to our next subtopic or question, which is number E, patriarchy. And the answer for this question is: patriarchy reformed or unreformed, is patriarchy still its worst abuses poignant or forsworn? It might actually be more stable and secure than before. Kit Millet. Patriarchy from the ancient Greek patriarch was a society where power was held by and passed down through the elder males. When modern historians and socialists describe a patriarchal society, they mean that men hold the position of power and have more privilege. Head of the family and unite leader or social groups, the boss in the workplace and head of the government. What do men control in the patriarchal system? Number 1. Women productivity or labor power. Men control women productivity both within the household and outside in paid work. Within the household, women provide all kinds of services to their husband, children, and other members of the family throughout their lives. Feminist writer Slavia Welby calls this as the patriarchal mode of production, where women's labor is expropriated by then husband and others who live there. She calls housewife as the producing class, and husband are the expropriating class. The work done by housewife is not considered as work at all, and housewives become dependent on their husband. Men also control women labor outside the home. They make women sell their labor or they may prevent the women from working. They may appropriate what women earn. Often women are excluded from better paid work. They are usually working in jobs with low wages or work within the home in what is called home-based production, which is itself an exploitative system. Number 2. Women reproduction. Men also control women's reproductive power. In many societies, women have no control over their reproduction capabilities. They cannot decide how many children they want, whether to use contraceptive or decision to terminate the pregnancy. In addition, men control social institutions like religion and politics, which are male dominated. Control is institutionalized by laying down rules regarding women reproduction capacity. Number 3. Control over women's sexuality. Women are obligated to provide sexual service to their husband according to their needs and desire. Moral and legal regulation exist to restrict the expression of women's sexuality outside marriage in every society, while male promiscuity is often condoned. Another way of exercising control over women's sexuality in when men force their wife, daughter, or other women in their control into prostitution. Rape and threat of rape is another way in which women's sexuality is controlled. The notion of shame and honor, family honor. Lastly, women's sexuality is controlled through their dress, behavior, and mobility, which are carefully monitored by the family and the social culture and religion codes of behavior. Number 4. Women mobility. Beside control of women's sexuality, production, and reproduction, men also control women's mobility. The imposition of purdah, restriction on leaving the house, a limit on the interaction between the sexes is some of the way by which the patriarchal society control women mobility and freedom of women. Such restrictions are unique to women, while men are not subject to such restriction. Number 5. Properties and other economic resources. Most properties and other productive resources are controlled by man and are passed on from father to son. Even in societies where women have legal right to inherit property, customary practice, social sanction, and emotional pressure prevent them from acquiring control over them. According to UN statistic, women do not do more than 60% of the honor of work done in the world, but they get 10% of the world income and own 1% of world properties. We have seen how men control different areas of women's life through the patriarchal order of society. So friend, till here our all subtopic short notes A, B, C, D and E was completed, and now in our next part we deal with our next question, which is question number 3. Hope you all like this video session, and if you are new to our channel, I request you all to please subscribe to our channel, and if you have any queries regarding this video, you can comment on the comment box, and if you like our video, give a thumbs on that. Thank you.